To make, invent, or offhand. This is the official definition of improv. I looked it up.
Oh.
A technique that has been used with success by actors and comedians ranging from Robin Williams to Tina Fey and Steve Carell to Stephen Colbert. My guest today has been using and teaching improv for voice acting since 2013. Her clients include Google, Macy's, and Fiverr. Welcome to the show. Love that, Rebecca Haugh.
Hey.
So good to have you here. Looking
Thank you.
forward to getting into this with you because this is a technique that I think I see people talking more and more about. And so, hey, and at this point, anything that we can do as humans to give us a leg up on the robots, right? Until they start training AI in improv, which, I'd be very curious to see how that would work.
Well, it depends where they get their learning models from.
That's right. But anything that we can do to give us a leg up. So this will be good to talk about this today. But first, I had to say, when I was doing some research for the interview, and I saw that you were coming to us live from the padded room, and I love the fact that you've actually given your studio a name.
Yes.
And yes, for anyone watching on YouTube, you can see I kind of feel compelled now that I got to do the same, though. So thank you for that, because I will probably spend an unhealthy amount of time trying to come up with a name for my studio, but I don't want to feel left out there.
Yeah. Well, it could be a pet name, or it could be the confines of which is the padded room. It could be the place room. It could be the bar. It could be the mic stand.
It's funny when because everybody has a padded room, right? And so then when you tell people, like I spend my day in the padded room, and that can be interpreted in a lot of different and interesting ways.
Intentionally, many meanings.
Yep. So I know from what I researched, and correct me if I'm wrong at any point along the way here, but you started out studying Meisner, correct?
Yes, I actually went down to before that, it was voiceover. It was just voiceover training.
Okay.
Because voiceover is where I was headed from having been in a corporate career and in marketing and sales and training. I used to be a corporate trainer too. So when I got into acting, it was really through voiceover in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then I was having some success, but it's a small market. And I said, heck, I got family in LA. I'm just going to go there. So that's when I went down to LA, and I thought, I'm going to get serious and I'm going to try to get in films. And I'd done some small indie films up in Northern California. And one of them even got played on PBS and won an award, or got nominated for an award. But I never saw the final version. But it was very inspiring to do that kind of work and to feel like you could disappear into this other character. That was really exciting. So I wanted to get serious about it, and I went to the Sanford Meisner Center in Hollywood. And that was kind of fun because it was literally address Hollywood,
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that, because I know that it's an acting technique that other voice actors have studied, or I'm familiar with other voice actors that have studied. So give us kind of the, the Cole's notes or the overview of that technique a little bit.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, you're supposed to do a 2-year. Well, that place was a 2-year program, and I did a year.
Okay.
And it's hard in a way because there's a lot of repetition. So you're doing a lot of back and forth and trying to connect with people with just watching them and saying the same phrase over and over and trying to find like emotional meaning. I found it very difficult.
Okay.
I found it hard to find. I found it hard to find success, and we were being taught by a guy who worked with Meisner for this man's. I forget his name right now, but he was always telling us stories about what it was like when Meisner and how Meisner would advise and blah, 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 blah. So I felt really like I was close to history and close to acting, roots and all that. But I actually delved into it as best that I could. It was basically like a night school for hours during the week, many hours, a couple of nights. And it was intense. And you're supposed to get into the emotional memory of your life and connect that with scenes that you can do. And I feel like I had one big victory. and the rest was really hard work. And I wasn't sure that I was going to be successful in that, although having that big victory on stage in front of the class, in front of him, and having him, raise his hands like, "Oh, good job, like that. That I was just, I was like, okay, so now I feel like, okay, I get something here. I really do. But I felt like it was really, really hard. So I started studying with other acting teachers and focusing on scene work. And I think what happened was I wanted to play more, and I felt like I was always studying and in my
Right.
head a lot. And when I had been in corporate work, I was doing in one part of that career, I was doing employee relations and employee events and stuff like that. And I got to help plan events. And one of the events that I planned was a dinner theater event for a sales event. And I was sitting there in the audience at one of the tables having the dinner, and these people are running around going crazy with this murder mystery and improvising and chatting with us. And I was like, I want to do that.
Those are my people.
Those are my people. And my coworkers were like, "You're so insane. I mean, this is fun, but I would never have the balls, kind of to go do that." And I was just like, "Let me out of my chair," So that memory never went away. And I started doing dinner theater down in Los Angeles. And I just answered some ads, and I did some kooky mystery dinner theater. I forget the group and everything, but I remember we did a season of it at this Italian dinner restaurant, and we had people forgetting their lines and messing up, and you're always improvising in that case. You knew what the end arc was going to be, and you knew, who was the good guy and who was the murderer and who was the, whatever. So it was just a lot of fun. So my experience in LA was a lot of personal learning and a lot of acting training, and then learning again that I really liked having fun, and doing dinner theater was really kicking it off. And prior to that, I'd done BATS theater in San Francisco, Bay Area Theater Sports, that stands for. So, and I had dated stand-up comedians. So, I just was really into having a lot of fun and playing, because that seemed to make me get out of my head. And that's what improv does for me.
It almost seems like a tale of two extremes. Like, as I listen to you talk about the two, talk about improv versus talk about Meisner, to me, it feels like they're like completely opposite ends of the spectrum in the approach that they take. So I can understand why one might resonate more than the other. The idea of having to tap into my like emotional, memories from my past, or like I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I literally can't remember past yesterday. Like I've worked with voiceover coaches before. We were like, "Tell me about a time in your childhood." I'm like, "I don't know. I don't remember." Like, tell me about a time when you felt emotion. I'm like, I'm a guy. I don't feel emotion. Like,
I shut that shit off.
What the heck? Yeah, that is gone.
Turned it off on purpose.
Yeah. I can't tap into that. I don't know what's going on there. So the idea of having to do that and be in a training environment for that would cause me massive anxiety, I think, which would, I suppose, is an emotion then at that point.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, you make it work for you.
So talk a little bit more about the start in improv. You said you did the dinner theater. Was that the training, or was there training?
That was, training on the job kind of thing. But I had some preliminary training up in BATS in San Francisco, Bay Area Theater Sports, where they're basically just teaching you improv. I don't think you would have found my connection to Keith Johnstone, but he is one of the theaters. He's the guy that's given the, what would you say? He's credited with the term theater sports, and he's a Canadian. He's a Canadian.
There you go.
And I have one of his books. You can see that I love it, right?
It looks well read.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of dog ears.
Lots of notes.
Yeah,
yep.
Oops, sorry. And I have another book of his too. Same look. So I got turned on to him by a friend of mine, and then got reminded about him when I was here, mostly in Italy, so stuck with, Italians that speak a different language and I don't speak their language. And I was like really freaking out that I needed to get back to some play, and improv was the only thing that kept coming to mind. So I just started delving into the books and saying, what can I do? What can I do? And I had some friends that I was talking to that are, from America, that we would get on Zoom or Skype at the time. And one of the guys just said, Rebecca, you should just start doing it online. And I said, really, you think? And he said, yeah, you just get people together and figure it out. You'll
Yeah.
do it. You'll be fine. Teach people and just keep going from there. And I won't say his name. I love him tons, and we're still friends. And he's gotten to be big in LA and everything with voice acting and everything. So I was really glad that he encouraged me, because he was really good. He's one of those people that's like a born entertainer. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And I just consider myself, an actress, a playful person, and a businesswoman. I don't consider myself an entertainer. I wish I could sing. I wish I could entertain, but basically I just want to have fun with you. Right.
Yep.
So that's what I want to do for my job. And I like the microphone and all of that. So the improv training happened in San Francisco, and then it continued because it made my heart grow to play in dinner theater. It made me scared as hell too, by the way. Did I say that
Yeah.
before? Because it was really scary, but it was that kind of thrill, like a roller coaster ride. It was
Right.
that kind of fun.
Yep.
And so I just kept doing it. And I said, I can't really get enough, and I'm failing all the time. I'm failing all the time. But the thing about improv is people save you. You're in it as a team,
Yep.
and you're not failing and left alone. You know what I mean? To die.
Well, and how does anybody know anyway if everything's getting made up as you like? If it's from an audience perspective, if you're making it up as you go, if you're literally improvising, like, they don't know one way or another that was supposed to be or that wasn't supposed to be,
right?
and
Because
so
it's really, you feel like you're failing sometimes, but you're
sure,
really not necessarily failing. You're
right,
just not coming across in a way that you maybe intended,
right,
which happens all the time in life too. And you just keep
yep,
going. Yeah. And so those were wonderful times because I was learning so much and working in a group and doing show after show after show, those are fun times. Yeah. So that's where it all started and came back. And I think I have to say, I have to give credit to the couple of guys that I dated that were stand-up comedians in the Bay Area. Um, they made me feel like I was close to something that I really liked a lot,
okay,
and I'm not interested in stand-up or comedy. Um, but people say that I'm comedic sometimes, and so I'm embracing that. And I think improv helps you feel playful, which means that
sure,
sometimes things will be funny. Doesn't
yep.
mean that that's required. So it feels like it's a safer space than anything near stand-up, because I'm scared of that.
That's interesting. I had a interview with Hugh Klitsky, and we were talking about conversational VO.
Yeah.
And talking about, what are some things that voice actors can do to help work on their acting, conversational skills, all that sort of stuff. And improv was one of the things that he brought up.
Yeah.
But we were talking about improv and how so often it is instinctively associated with comedy, right?
Uh-huh.
It's and I think it's because, at the beginning I talked about, Robin Williams, Steve Carell, Tina Fey.
Amy
These are the
Poehler.
people that we associate with it. And so we instinctively associate it with comedy, but that isn't specifically the case or the whole story, is it?
Well, and you don't know Keith Johnstone because, he's not about the comedy aspect.
Yeah.
He's about creativity and playfulness, but he's really about, he came from a place of where he was thwarted as a child from being creative. He
Mhm.
felt like the school system that he went through was shoving him into a hole, whether he fit that hole or not, whatever shape,
Yep.
and he felt like he wanted to create a system with improvisation that would help people get out of their shell. And in essence, that's my philosophy.
Yep.
My philosophy is improv is not about comedy, at least not for voiceover. This is not our goal. well, it used to be called Love That Improv VO, and now it's just VO Improv. My whole focus on using improv is to help me be a better actor. And if you do go back to Tina Fey or Amy Poehler, I forget which one said, it's like improv is like a church. Now, not to say that in a derogatory way,
Sure.
but in a positive way, because some people think that's not good to say that because it's religious. But it's a place where you can go that you feel like you can play and feel freedom in a way that helps you do everything else in your life.
Yep. Well, that
And
makes
so
sense.
in that way,
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's really positive.
So talk about the concept of be more you, because
Oh, yeah.
one would assume that, if it's me in the booth, it's me in front of the mic, it's me delivering the read.
Well,
What's
what's
more
weird,
me than that? But it is more
right,
nuanced
right?
than that.
You do. And what's so weird about that is so often people will get in front of a mic and then they will turn into something else that they think that sounds like them still. And they're trying to do something and
Yep.
they're trying to come across in a certain way.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, well, we've been talking for a little while and we've just been being us. But sometimes when you're extemporaneous like this, it's one thing. But if you're reading words, how do you make it feel like those words are your words?
Yep.
Right? So the idea is you find a way to create your own path into the words. And I always call it, when I see a script, it's usually a white page with black text on it, right? And so the text is your scene partner and the white space is your freedom area. So you got all that white space to play within. And the way you become more unique in you is how you go about choosing who you're talking to, where you are, what you're doing, and why those words are important right now. Because everybody's unique in making those choices. And that is how you make it you. You make it unique because nobody else is going to come up with the same combo that you come up with.
Yep. Totally
and nobody
valid.
else is going to bring it with the same level of pacing and tone and meaning that you bring, because you're thinking of all those things that are particular to you. And that's how you do it. That's the best way to become and make sure that you're always tuning into something in a way that's uniquely you. Yeah.
I get the feeling. So for a lot of us, and I would throw myself into this category as well, it's really easy to get inside your head. When you get in the booth, you start reading the directions. You're just trying to figure out, what are they actually asking for? Or what are they really saying?
Yeah.
And it's really easy to get inside of your head.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that one of the advantages potentially of improv, you don't have really the option to be inside of your head when you're doing improv. Like if you're on the fly, you're just acting. Like you're just
playing.
You're
That's
just
I
playing.
like to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just playing, right? You're not standing around thinking about it. You don't have the opportunity to think about it. So is it fair to say that is one of the things that improv can potentially bring to what you're delivering in the booth, is the ability to kind of help you get out of your head? Like, are there exercises that you could do that would just help you to relax and get out of your head when you get into the booth and immediately get into your head?
I'm not sure, because that's a unique problem that everybody has for different reasons, and usually they're protective reasons.
Yeah.
So I think that improv is better because it helps you understand how to play as an adult. And for me, once you decide you can play and give yourself permission to play, and then start exploring that play like you're a child again in your heart, even though you're not in your experience, then you have a new sense of awareness and sensibility, like your senses become more alive. So everything takes on a different aspect. And you can get in your head a little bit, sure, especially when you're newer to improv, because you're thinking, oh, this is a game. What are the rules? And you freak out again. And it's like deer in the headlights.
Yep.
But it's a different kind.
Yep.
And I think what improv does is it helps you play. So you don't get into your head. You try to get into play. So you try to say, okay, wow, these words I would never say. So you do all the normal stuff, right? I would never say these frickin' words, but it happens really fast. And then you say, yeah, but who could I talk to about this topic? Okay. And where would we have that conversation? Okay. And you've done this so many times because of your improv workout and play that you're just doing all that stuff all the time that you go, okay, let me try it this way. Okay, that felt pretty natural, but let me try it this way because you know what? I just thought of this other person that I talk to about that kind of stuff all the time when we're having coffee, right?
That's so good. So it helps you find the space, whatever the perspective. I guess perspective, right? So much of this is about perspective, right? What's my point of view? Who am I talking to? And that's where improv can come in and helping you to
totally does that.
Bounce from one place to the next. Nope, that's not the one. Nope, that's not the one. That's the one.
And you actually can do it really faster than ever before. Like I remember when I would take voiceover classes when I first started, they're like, I had this checklist of, it could have been a 30-second script, and the checklist and the fill in the blanks of who you are and what the circumstances were that just happened, blah, blah. You had to write it out, like, I mean, if you wanted to. And I literally used to do that. I used to go to acting and, auditions. I had to drive to voiceover auditions back then.
Back in the day. God bless the home studio and Source Connect.
Yeah. So, and internet. Yeah. So I think it helps you be you, and it helps you do all that stuff much faster because your muscles are used to it. It's like you're doing an activity that you're really familiar with, and it's a lot of repetition. Repetition is key. And then it is point of view, and it is applying to your own life, kind of like the Meisner thing, but different, right? So I don't know. When I heard, I read the books that both Amy and Tina Fey, Amy Poehler and Tina Fey wrote, and I was a huge fan of Whose Line Is It Anyway? I mean, I used to just watch that thing and lay on the floor and start laughing. I mean, I would just be on the floor laughing, right?
Yep.
Because they're so good. They're so good. And I'm not one of those people who is like really into the culture and knows all the things you can say that remind people of, what just happened last week and blah, 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 and who said what and what games are popular and movies are popular and all that, right?
Yep.
So I don't have those references necessarily. So for me, just to be able to play and do it on a regular basis is so helpful for making the acting muscles come alive in whatever way they need to for you. You don't have to be a Shakespearean actor. You know what I mean?
Yep. Earlier, you mentioned the word fear, and I think it's a very relevant word to this conversation. And I think you've observed in the past that fear keeps people from improv. Oh, yeah. I would say that is an entirely accurate statement. I feel that in myself. So the question then becomes, what's the trick to overcoming the fear?
Doing it anyway, and doing it in a safe environment and finding the right space for you. I have trained people who had bad experiences from a different kind of improv teacher. I think that I was kind of blessed with this weird combo of having training as a part of my life experience, and teaching adults. It was teaching adults. So it's different than being a teacher of, grade school or whatever.
Yep.
And I think that you have to be assured that you're going to be in a safe space if you are fearful. A lot of people have been fearful that have taken my classes. And I guess it's more about creating that space of, first of all, who are we, and then, it doesn't matter if you fail. Right here, right now, it's all about finding the fail so that you can find the fun, right? So let yourself fail if you think that that's what it is, and just try to play like a little kid. It's really just about going back into the sandbox.
I would think a lot of it would have to do with just, there's got to be a space where there's no judgment.
Oh,
I think, right? Like, so that you can, because that's what makes it, that's what gives you the freedom to explore.
Right.
Because you're not going to get there the first time, right?
In a sandbox. Yeah. I mean, so you got to go in a space where it starts gently and easy. You don't want to have a lot of rules and have a lot of things thrown at you when you're just kind of scared anyway to do something that you think is going to be scary. I mean, I think it was Nikki Lou Lowe. Hi, Nikki. she was the one I think that said, I was so scared to do improv, I wanted to peel the skin off my face rather than go do improv. Something like that.
That's a very intense feeling.
That's a,
Doesn't
so,
get much more intense than that.
right? I mean, if you'd rather pull the skin off your face than do
Yeah.
improv, you're not wanting to do improv, but she did it anyway. And you
Yep.
just got to cross the bridge. I've had very many moments as an actor where I really got scared and I didn't want to go ahead. um, one of the bigger the bigger dinner theater was one of those wedding shows, and I was going to the audition and I was terrified, and I actually literally thought about turning around. I thought, well, if I can't find parking, I just won't do the audition because I can't park. It was LA.
Yep.
And
What are you talking about? The freeway is a parking lot in LA, isn't it?
yeah, but you're not at your spot. And I think it was going to West Hollywood. And yeah, I was just terrified, but I did it anyway. And I got the job and they knew right away. That was the fun part, is afterwards they told me they knew right away. Um, you just have to go for it. You just have to, there's a certain part of you that just has to take over and trust. Um, and then if you don't like it, if you're having a hard time, maybe you're with the wrong teacher.
Right.
And
Makes
that's what
sense.
I've heard from other people, that they were with the wrong teacher. And I feel bad about that for people because you want to be able to come out of your shell and feel like it's okay. Um, and it really is just like being a little kid. When you were a little kid, you might remember this. When you were a little kid and you were going to school, the first day of school or something like that. We're really real near that. There are kids going to school right now, just the first day of school. And maybe it's a new school for you, or maybe it's a new grade that is more kids coming in from other neighborhoods or something like that. And so there's something familiar, but there's also a lot of stuff that's unfamiliar,
A lot of
right?
uncertainty. Yep. Yep.
It's kind of like that, you know?
Yep.
And you just go and you do, and you're in your own space and you're in your own home because you're doing it virtually through Zoom. So, there's a lot of positives, and then you just have to trust and read testimonials. Find out how other people have done.
I think it's important to talk about the teacher thing because
Yeah.
that's universal, right? Not every voiceover coach that you work with is going to be the right fit for you. And it doesn't
Oh,
mean
yeah.
that they're not a great coach or that you're not a good voice actor. It's just personalities, teaching techniques, just the
Chemistry.
way that chemistry, that whole thing. And so,
Mhm.
if you have one experience with a voiceover coach that you don't immediately click with, you don't just give up on voiceover. You go and find another voiceover coach
That's right.
and find one that you do click with. And so I
That's right.
think it's important that you say that if you've had a bad experience or, maybe you tried improv once and it didn't go so well or whatever, that's not a statement on improv. You just might not have been in the right environment. You might not have been working with the right person. So don't give up on it completely.
Yeah, don't give up. Just try someone else, try a different
Yeah.
circumstance. There have been people who went into one school, and this was more in a live situation, and they were kind of felt like they were mocked when they were on stage after they did their scene, and
Yeah.
that kind of situation is going to just make you want to leave, right?
Sure.
And you
Yeah.
should leave, basically, because that's
Yep.
just not working. Um, but then in another case, you can find out that they're like, okay, right. How did that feel for you? Right. And there's more like, how's it going for you? And they walk you through and get your confidence up. And then at that point, then they can start veering you in different directions. Once you're like on your 2 feet and you're feeling pretty good about playfulness. Um, it really depends. That's why I liked Keith Johnstone, because he wasn't full of a lot of rules. In fact, he was kind of like anti-rule. But
Right.
you make games up and they have rules. But and there are various schools of improv. There's the IO theater, there's the groundlings. There are different types of schools out there that have more of a comedic bent and less of one. I never went to any of those schools. I've done some of the workshops, but I never studied for, weeks on end and going through all the levels and that sort of thing. I don't really think that that's necessary for what we do.
Right.
I think just doing improv on a regular basis is important, and finding a workout group that you can do that with, or friends that you can do that with, that are all kind of focused on the same thing. Um, yeah, so it's really important to know that and read a little bit about improv and the different things that are out there. Read about Viola Spolin, the grandmother. I call her the grandmother of American acting improvisation. Keith Johnstone, the Canadian, who basically wanted to get out of molds, and start something new. And then all the different the schools that there are out there, Sharna Halpern and all the schools that erupted in like the 80s, I think, 70s and 80s.
Does it lend itself to certain genres more than others? Is it universal? I'm thinking like, okay, I feel like if I'm looking at animation and video games, for example, I can see where there would be opportunities where improv would come in, but and it would make a lot of sense to give yourself the freedom to play, because my guess is you're going to do some pretty awkward, maybe potentially uncomfortable, different types of things when you're in those roles or doing those jobs. But what about the voice actor that's doing e-learnings or corporates or commercials? Is there a place for improv? Does it?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of was thinking about it just now when you were mentioning that, because I kind of knew where you were going. And I think what it is you are having a lot more reactions in something like a video game or an animation situation. You are reacting and responding, and there are all kinds of scene changes for you because you're in multiple scenes, right? Like I did this animation, I think it was 2 years ago. I still don't know where it's at, but there were scenes where there was a neighbor peeking over my wall. And then there was another scene where this dinosaur pet was running amok through the town. And I was just watching it run by and seeing the child who's the pet owner and then the parents of the child and seeing all of them run by, and so I'm observing all this and yelling something out, at the time. So there are different circumstances and they're very visual and they're very clear. So you have a sense of really what's happening. It's helping you that way. And then when you're dealing with e-learning on the other side of the coin, like that's the least playful, right? If you look at it on a playful scale, that's probably where you can play a lot of improv in the playful, playful
it's pretty
area.
hard to be playful when you're talking about employee onboarding or sexual harassment training or sales training or
yeah, all of that. But what you can do is say, well, what circumstance am I in and what makes sense? And literally like create the space for yourself so that you really are that person. Like I do, there's one client I've been working with a couple of years now, doing a lot of their internal, it's healthcare and it's healthcare information, right?
Okay.
And I'm always thinking about who I am and how I represent them. So like I have it's like I have a costume that I put on when I do that work, right? So it's like the character that I put on when I'm doing their work, and I've been working with them. Yeah. So I think what you want to do is, maybe you're just fine just doing yourself and reading, but for me, that just makes it more boring. So if you want to make it more exciting,
you're building out an entire avatar of this is who I am when
it. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because first of all, for me in this case, it helps me satisfy the client on a regular, rapid basis because we've decided based on their input, obviously, how they want to sound. So then all I have to do is put on that costume and become that character, right? And so that works in that way. And I have another client I've been working with for many years, so I just don't do it as frequently, just a couple times a month. And same thing, So, and I've even tried sometimes, well, let me just wear this hat and this coat and see if they like it that way, just to change it up a little bit.
What happens when the characters merge?
Well, no, you've got to be careful about that. You've got to keep yourself straight on that. It's like when you're working an audiobook. I don't do audiobooks very often, and I haven't done any fiction, but I work with some people in the improv that have come into improv and they say, improv really helps me in the audiobook when I'm doing fiction and multiple characters.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't have to switch editing and do all that. Like I have a lot less work because I can switch to the character and then back to the other character back and forth. And so I think it's really, really helpful in the variety of genres, just to get back to your question. And keeping things straight is important too. When you're doing different characters, you got to be able to shift. And I think being playful, it's all about being playful, really, really helps with that.
So do you have a library that you've built? I was thinking about,
Yeah.
I had a conversation, I don't know, a month or two ago with Donna Vincent Roa, and we were talking about AI and some of the different ways that she uses AI as a personal assistant for her business.
Mm.
And she was talking about building out a character library that she could literally go to and say, this spot's calling for that. And she has this character library that she can then reference. So as you're doing this, you're putting on those coats like you talked about. What do you keep, like a diary or a journal, or so you can remember, this is who I was when I did
That's
that, or this is the character
interesting.
that I
A
tapped
lot of
into for
people
that, or
suggest it. Yeah. I have a list and I keep building the list. Um, and those I would say are more playful characters. And then that's just this client with that client name label. You know what I
yep,
mean?
yep.
Um, you know, uh, but I don't have to write them down. I don't know. I think that's just because it's regular work and it's
Regular
just
work, you're just doing it.
yeah,
You're
and it's
there.
just doing it. Yeah. And then, like when I was doing it, auditions, this happens all the time, and whether it's commercial or narration, it doesn't matter. Um, I'll be like, okay, what kind of points of view, what kind of POV can I have? What kind of attitude can I have? Do I want to be the young, refreshing, da 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 da, or do I want to be like a secretive, like, hey, you know what? This is really cool because the script is giving me some sort of info, and I don't maybe have all the info and the specs, so I get to play a little bit. There's that white space, right? So you can come up with some characters, and you're just playing, and you're just trying to explore what you think is going to be the best thing to submit, so I think it really helps in that case, but it's not necessarily always. Maybe if I had to think about it a lot more, maybe I'm just not one of those people who puts it in a box like that.
I could see if you were doing books and you're, multiple characters that you're jumping back and forth
Oh,
or
people
something
have
like
told
that.
me.
But
Yeah.
so let's talk about ad libs, because
Yeah.
I mean, really, to me, that's a form of improv.
Yeah,
And
it is.
it's something that people talk about sometimes, like if you're doing an alt take on a commercial script or something like that. What are your thoughts as far as, is there a right time or a wrong time, or is it something that you do? Talk about that.
Yes, I do it. And then either I'll edit it out or I'll leave it in depending on the circumstances. And that's where it gets,
Oh,
yeah, that's where it becomes something that, hopefully, where you're sending it to, whether they'll appreciate it or won't want it. Yeah.
so would you be ad-libbing to help you get to your point of view then?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no. That's more like a running start. So I
Okay.
would say, I consider ad-libbing anything where you're just throwing in a something that is not part of the script. And that could be at the beginning, in the middle, or the end, right?
But
In the
you said there's
beginning,
times when you might do it and you might edit it out. So give me an example.
that would be
What
more
were
like
you?
a running start, and I know that they don't want it or it's too long. It just took me a while to get into it, so it's too long. Yeah.
So you're using that lead in to help you
Right.
get to the
But I
sweet spot for how you want to
right.
deliver that read. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then sometimes there might be an extemporaneous, or, "Oh, well, bidi bidi bidi." So you might have these little short reactions or thought moments, yeah, that
Yeah.
happen maybe really naturally.
Picking up a
And
transition in the script or something like that.
yeah,
Okay.
and,
Gotcha.
those, they might just seem so natural, I don't even hear them,
Right.
and I'll leave them in. And then sometimes you can find something funny at the end, depending on, what it is that you're reading, and you'll have an ad-libbed line at the end. They call it putting a button on it. I've heard that used. And
Yep.
yeah, you want to leave that in because then you might stand out as really kind of funny. Like, oh, that was a good sense of humor. It just depends. There are some casting people who are like, don't do ad libs. So you just have to remember who they are.
And that's the trick, right? Because especially if you're starting out and you don't know all that yet,
Yeah.
you don't know
Yeah.
who is into it or who isn't into it. It's something
Or
that
if you're
gets talked
doing the
about a lot.
platforms, if you're doing the platforms like Voice 1, 2, 3 or whatever, you don't know who's on the other end.
So it's an alt take, though.
Could be.
If you were going to do it, you maybe do it on an alt take, like give them one, make sure you gave them one
There's
that's
no rule
exactly what
there
they want.
either.
But
I
yeah,
don't call it. Yeah, I just say it depends. It just
you improv
depends.
people in your fights against the rules.
Well, the other thing is, what are we fighting for? But to stand out,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yep.
And maybe you come up with something that is so quick and so fun and so you're like, I can't cut that. I'm
Yeah.
not going to cut that. I'm going to leave
Yep.
that in. And I'm putting it first because I want to stand out.
When
Because I
you're,
know there's already going to
auditioning
be
against,
50, or
yeah,
100.
you're 100 or 500 or, some of these nationals, who God knows how many people are submitting for those ones, right? So yeah, if it gives you a way to stand out. All right. So case study. Let's do a case study moment if we can. I would love to hear an example of a time where you have used improv techniques, whether specifically on a project or in how you approached, maybe you got an audition that you just really wanted to do something special on or whatever. But I'd love to just hear an example of how you've used some of these improv techniques to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple. I actually put them together in videos so that I can use them for training.
Okay.
And basically, I had the specs, the original audition, and the final booked job.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of those, they're mostly where I'm really being playful. So there was one for the beef industry, and the video is just a woman from here down because she's working on a table. So all you see are mostly her hands, the apron that she's wearing, and she's putting together a lunch, right? And in that one, she's being a little bit sassy. So she's having fun talking about making lunch and making the kids have fun. And isn't that Mr. Mick something something? So I just had fun saying those words because I could tell they were being playful. And I
Yep.
let myself be playful in my own personality. And I booked that.
Okay.
And I think you could have done it and been much more flat and much more um, who's a famous mother, in
Yep.
television. It's just something straight,
Mm-hmm.
and that might have worked. And then there was another one for a company that does a lot of different videos, and they use lots of different voice actors. And in this one, it was very playful, and it was kind of Dr. Zeusy, the way
Okay.
that they were doing
Yep.
they were making it rhyme, and it was kind of like poetry, and they wanted a very kind of a jovial take, playing with the words and keeping that kind of rhythm to it, but not making it. It wasn't like slam poetry or anything like that. It was more
Sure.
playful,
Yep.
and that was another one that I booked. Um, but you never know. I mean, I'm doing this all the time. What have I booked lately that I can say I can attribute it to that? Um, sometimes, like, I have a new client that is actually just coming back and back to me. Um, and sometimes it's just about how real you are. And I'd say
That's what
that
everybody's
improv
looking for now.
and I'd say that improv really helps you be real, and you're gonna, you're your own personality. And, like you said earlier, like we were saying, this chemistry isn't always the mix. That was for teaching, but that's the same with people who are hiring you for voiceover.
Sure.
They're looking also to find out who your personality is, and if that gels with their client or them, depending on who they are and who's hiring, etc. So I think the best thing you can do is just try to really, really let your personality shine through. Because that's what I feel like is happening more recently,
Yep.
and maybe we'll get back into more comedy. But I think because of COVID and how long that lasted, there was a lot of change in how people were approaching the lightness and the playfulness. And I think we're starting to get back to that.
Yep.
But it was primarily like all about um, being real and having your personality shine through. And, I think that's what's making it now. And improv helps you just feel that instead of feeling like you have to be a narrator of a certain style. And one last thing that's really important and dumb at the same time, but you have to be able to read really well on the
Yeah.
fly, cold read,
Yep.
and just read really well so that you can play around the words. I mean, that's really important. And that's something that's come out I think as more people have tried to get into voiceover, they can read just fine, but they're not reading like it's extemporaneous talking.
I have found aspects of my skill set that I had no idea that I had, simply by virtue of having 2 new kids, 3-year-old now and 5-month-old. Story time every night before bed, and 2 or 3 books. And I have tried really hard to go from dad who just crawled into bed and just read the book, to dad who's crawling into bed and trying to actually tell the story or whatever. I'm like, man, this is probably one of the best aspects of practicing for my voiceover business that I've done in a really long time. Let's talk about that too. Let's talk about practice. There's groups of voice actors that will get together, maybe once a week, and they do like script workouts or things like that. What are a couple of tips or tricks or techniques that you could offer to say, hey, while you're getting together, you're doing your script workouts or whatever, why don't you try this little improv thing and, see where that takes you,
Oh,
or
yeah.
how that changes the dynamic?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to do it really fast, but you could play some games. You could just do some warm-up games, and you can look up on the internet. You give me some improv games, and you can have some games that you could play, like Zip Zap Zop or other things. We do that in our improv workout warm-up as well. Here's one that you could remember though: ABC story. Okay, what does that mean? That means you get one line per person. You go around in a circle. You pick the order, so it's not random, so you're not struggling with that. And you tell a story, but each word that you start with has to start with the next letter of the alphabet. So if I was starting, I'd start with A. You could start somewhere else in the alphabet, but to keep it simple to understand, A, B, C. Then you would take the next line and you would start with a word that begins with the letter B. And then the next person would start with a new line, building and layering on this story that you're telling. And you could say, we'll go around the circle twice and we'll come to the end at the end of the second circle finishing. So you know how long it's going to take. So you kind of understand intuitively how to build your story and create some characters and tell a story. And then you just have this one little rule, or you could just do it without even the ABC rule and keep it even simpler and say, let's tell a story. Let's just make up a story and go from there. Just go around in a circle.
It feels to me, because I don't know a lot about improv, and so even trying to figure out how to put together this interview, I guess more than anything, I was asking questions out of curiosity. But as I'm listening, it's just so much of it just feels like it's really about breaking down walls, right? Like as we get older, we lose that childlike nature. We stick to the rules. We have responsibilities, and it's really easy to get in a rut of just doing things a certain way, right? I mean,
well, Marc, that is exactly how I see it. That is exactly, and I will say that you kind of nailed something that I've also noticed is that people that I've met that want to do improv that have kids have an easier time of it. Mm-hmm. Because they're already having to play with their kids or have had to play with their kids, and they can relate with that and grab onto that and gel with that, right? With that memory. And you're living through it right now. So that's really positive.
And I've seen how much, even that, I've seen how much the dynamic of that has changed in myself, now that Kaylee's 3, and I do interact with her differently than I did when she was 1 and when she was 2. And not just because, being 1 and being 2, but I don't know, I'm just more easygoing and willing to be a little bit more goofy than I was before or whatever. And I've seen that. I've noticed that. I noticed it in how I do the stories. And I just, as I'm listening to you talk about this, I'm like, it feels like this is what, if you give yourself permission to just go in and be free.
Yeah.
This would be something that would break down walls that most of us, whether we realize it or not, are carrying into the booth in some capacity, because you mentioned the word mold. I totally see that. You're in a mold. And maybe it's because you've been doing this for a long time and you found a place of comfort, but then, hey, like seasons change. And if you're a voice actor who found that place of comfort and all of a sudden that place of comfort's not working anymore, maybe you're in a mold and it's time to
want to expand.
It's time to break down the wall and have that little bit more fun. So look, you got to tell us, how can we work with you then? Because I think at this point, if we haven't convinced at least a few people that this is something that you should at least play around with once or twice, I don't know what we did then, but I'm sure we did. So tell us, what are you, what kind of stuff do you offer, and how can we work with you?
Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, I'm not the only person out in the voiceover world offering improv. So I offer a boutique experience. I try to keep the groups small and no more than, 15 maybe or 13. And classes are very small, like 6, 8. And it's called VOimprov.com. And everything is there. And I teach a 101 class, a beginner class that I'm having actually usually every fall and every spring. And I do a free webinar twice a year, and randomly do other different things with different groups, or put on a special class here and there.
Okay.
I've worked with I have different people come in and be the person who leads a regular Monday workout. Sometimes we've done more days, but we have one day a week that we do a workout for 90 minutes. And it's great because it's on Monday, so it kickstarts your week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and I also do VO Improv Biz Chat Monday. That's just something to get together and chat. Nothing's recorded. It's not about improv. It's just that through that venue I've created as kind of a people who know each other, and it's a nice way to create community.
Okay.
But get out and get improv however you can, wherever you can, play, get in the black box theater, locally, community, whatever, your community theater, your community college. Yeah.
I mean, we touched on it at the beginning of the conversation, but one of the things that we are going to have to work on is as human voice actors is finding ways to stand out and deliver a different kind of experience, a different kind of read, a different type of connection to the story, to the script, etc. And a lot of people that I've talked to that I've had on the show, we talk about AI, and it's been said repeatedly that the voice actor, like the one who can actually act, those are the ones that will have the greatest longevity.
Yeah.
And it feels like this technique, this improv technique, is just one more tool that you can add to your toolbox to help you stand out and differentiate yourself from, AI can read great, but so much of what we deliver it's so far beyond that. And this is one of those tools.
The synthesized voices that are being created are being modeled further and further and sweetened. I don't know. That's maybe a way to think about it. And getting better and better. But what they can't do is really respond. And they're not really human. So the more you can make sure that, and I call that the personality coming through and being playful and being real, because that's what makes you human. Be human.
Speaking of improv, when the internet goes down, and we're back. Crash.
That was such a great thing that you just said, though.
If only I could remember before the internet went down.
I was trying to play a game with you.
Oh, that's why then I actually kicked you out, because I was like, I knew at some point she was going to try to make me do improv, and that was where I was going to cut the interview right off.
Come on, man.
The fear and the uncomfortableness of the whole entire thing. And I was like,
so like there's some more sophisticated games, and then there's like the basic games, like telling a story, right?
Sure.
Like you could play with your 3-year-old, like, honey, let's tell a story about what happened today. And what's your daughter's name? The 3-year-old?
Kaylee. She can tell stories, let me tell you.
So you'll say, Kaylee, one line at a time. You go, and then I go, and then you go. It's one line at a time. And she'll do 5 lines, and you're like, okay, it's my turn.
No.
And you tell a story about the frog or whatever.
She will see Daddy's lips starting to prepare to move, and she will say, Daddy, I'm telling a story.
Wow, that's cute. That's really cute. There's a gift-giving game. Ninja is a more sophisticated game. There's a what's in the box game I like to play with new people. So here's one you could play. It's kind of a mono thing, so you could do it by yourself. And anybody watching, you could do this at home. Marc, there's a shelf behind you. Now, I want you to imagine that there's a shelf in front of you, too, that's virtually there, but it's real. And you can pick a box off of it and put it down in your lap. So it's small enough to fit on your lap. So do that for me, and then pull something out of the box.
Okay, so I'm picking up a box, sitting it on my lap,
Yeah.
pulling
Now,
something out of the box. What is in the box?
look at it.
Obviously.
Now hold it with your hand if you can,
Okay.
or if you need two hands. I don't know.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, what
Actually,
is it?
I pulled my stress ball out of the box.
Ah! Well, that's for real. Now,
This is my
pull something.
Linus safety blanket. It's like, I knew she was going to make me do something.
Well, it's no problem. So, so if your stress ball could talk, let's hold it up near your microphone so we can all see it. What would it say? What stories would it tell us? Oh, it's a baseball. Is it an
It's
official
actually,
baseball?
this is just a squeezy stress ball baseball.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, this is the official baseball.
Oh, okay. So you have the two of them next to each other, and from here they kind of look the same. Can you hold them up?
Yes, I
Because
can.
I can't really tell the difference.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot. This is
So
an
what would one
official
say to the other? So
MLB.
like have two lines, one back and forth, the real baseball and then the other fake stress ball.
I have been to Fenway Park. I have never left Marc's desk.
And they're both right.
They're
I mean,
both right.
they should be proud of both of those moments.
Right.
We could go on, but I won't stress you.
It's funny though, because I know that there are people that are watching that are totally going to connect with, like, it feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. You don't want, like, oh man, people are watching. They're going to make fun of me. What if I don't do it the right way? Like, I totally get all those things that you've talked about, but that's the whole point, is in doing it is so that you get to that point where it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I
And
feel like it would
usually,
probably really help you too if you go into a studio session. We've all been in those studio sessions where there's like 8 people on the other side of the glass that are staring back at you. And I don't care how good you are, or how epic you delivered your voiceover or whatever. When there's 8 people standing there just staring at you, and you don't know what they're saying on the other side of that glass, there is a level of intimidation and discomfort that you feel,
yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
And this might be one of those techniques that kind of helps you to just not care, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that.
First, like the old story is imagine them all naked, or they're planning lunch, and
Yep.
you want to get your lunch order in. So you're like, come on, are you going to take my order?
Yeah.
Or what else can you think of, right? You can say, what has she got in her purse over there?
Yeah.
Or yeah, you start looking at their clothes. That guy got out of bed and he did not look at what he was putting on his body.
So many things that can just kind of create that diversion or that distraction that helps you to
Yeah.
just relax and get out of your head. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Get out
So
of the
much good
nerves
stuff.
in that
Yeah.
case. Get out of the nerves.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, give us the website again.
VOimprov.com.
We'll put that into the show notes so anybody can check that out.
Oh, fun.
And if they want to find out about some of the different sessions or coaching and different things
Yeah.
like that you offer.
Yeah.
Man, Rebecca, this has been really good. I'm glad that I convinced myself to do this, because I honestly, it wasn't that I didn't want to have a conversation with you. You've been on my list for like a year. In all
wow.
seriousness, you've been on my list for like a year, but I'm like,
Yay.
I don't know the first stinking thing about improv, and I'm like, I don't even know how do I tell a story with her?
Well, I
and
was
have
going
that
to test
conversation?
you. I was going to test you and say, what is your experience? And now be like your doctor, give me 5 cents. And okay, yeah.
But
we
it's
don't need
like
to go there.
it was one of those things where I was like, I legitimately was like, how do I even talk about it? Like, I find I have a hard time talking about
You
things that
did
I don't know anything
great.
about. And so to be able to really sit down and just be able to be inquisitive, and which I think,
Yeah.
I'm probably coming from a perspective that a lot of other voice actors are, where they don't know, or they just think about the fear or intimidation side of it. I mean, we've all run
Yeah.
into Scott Parkin in the hall at VO Atlanta, and like, you just never know what's going to happen when you have an encounter with that guy. And some people are like totally into it, and other people are like, how do I get on the other side of the room from Scott Parkin so I don't have to have, right? And it's not because you don't love Scott, it's just because you're like, I'm afraid of what's going to happen. So I mean, if it's relatable, but hopefully this shines a little bit more of a light on it for people, and
I hope
I really
so.
do hope that people will explore it, because I think there's a lot of upside to some of the techniques and
There's
things
only
we've talked
upside.
about.
You know
Yeah.
what? There's only upside, because anything else is just a matter of practice,
Yeah.
really. Yeah. And like we said before, chemistry with teachers, all that. So And we go through that anyway,
Yep.
whether it's
Yep.
improv or not. So yeah,
Awesome.
totally. Don't be
Well,
afraid of
Rebecca,
Scott.
this has been absolutely amazing, and I'm really grateful that you took the
Same
time to
here.
come and share with us today.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much.
Appreciate it.